Hey guys, my name's Nick and welcome back to the channel, and in this video we are continuing along with our Sector Mechanicus terrain. And this time, instead of just doing all the floor panels and everything else, we're moving on to some of the larger pieces that come within these kits. Now this is the large cylindrical part that comes with the Promethium relay set, as well as the ferrotonic incinerator and ferrotonic furnace. Now all these parts are exactly the same, and they're painted exactly the same if you want to go for this particular colour scheme. So I'm probably going to stick with this colour throughout all three of these, but this video is just going to focus on painting one of them. What you'll also notice is that I've also painted all of the other bits of detail that go around this. So this is going to be focusing on the main parts of colour. Now if you want to see how I've done all of the other parts of this model, then please check out the other bits of the other videos that I've done on my Sector Mechanicus terrain, and I'll leave links in the description below, put up a card, all that kind of stuff, so that you can easily link to those other videos and see the techniques that I've used in order to paint the rest of this kit. So without further ado, let's crack straight into the video. So here we go then guys, this is the part that we're talking about for this particular video. It's the large cylindrical storage tank. It could be full of plasma or promethium, whichever you want to call it, but it's a large line blocking piece of terrain covered in detail, and as you can see I've adopted exactly the same technique for the top panels as I have for all the floor panels, so everything now interlinks, and you can see here that I'm just putting on some of those plasma conduit pipes, and you can see the same colour adopted throughout there, so that matches. And then again, if we start adding in some of these other floor panels, you can see that the colour all matches and everything is interchangeable, which is the great thing about this kit. The other good thing is that those pipes are exactly the same height as all the other bits of terrain, so you can actually put them vertically as well as horizontally. So the first thing we're going to do is just a quick recap here, so that what I've done here is paint all the detail first, all the metallic stuff, so anything that's pipe related and all the rest of it, I've done that in brass. Then I've painted all the hoses and everything else, and this is exactly the same technique that I've done on the thermic plasma pipes and everything else that's been involved in this video and Sector Mechanicus terrain kits so far. But as I said, I'm not going to go through and paint all of these details on this particular video. If you want to catch up and see exactly how I've finished this off, then please check out the other videos in this series. So now we move into the action cam. So instead of the top-down camera for this, we're moving over to the airbrush booth. So I've switched cameras so that we can actually see what I'm doing here, and I'm starting with a hot orange from Vallejo, an airbrush colour. And what I'm going to do is I've masked off the exact area that I want to cover with this orange so that it doesn't go onto the other bits of detail. You can do this the other way around. You can do the orange first and then hand paint all the metallics, but for me I found this was a little bit easier to do and gave me a little bit more control. It's up to you though, you can go either way. But as I said, we're just going to spray this entire section orange. Now there are 4 sections of this. For this video I'm just going to focus on one of them, and all you've got to do is repeat it exactly the same for the other 4. Now because I'm having to mask off this way, I can't paint all 4 in the same way with this thickness of masking tape. So all I've done is masked off the one with this 20mm masking tape and then just rinse and repeat for the other sections. So a good coverage, good couple of coats really, because you're doing a light colour over metallic, and then once you've got a nice solid colour, I've then switched to a slightly hot orange or a slightly brighter orange, and then just spraying that in the middle to add a little bit of height, to a little bit of give a little bit of depth and just a little bit more detail, and just spray that orange into the middle and just sort of push it around a little bit, and so that it looks nice and cool. Again, I think I used 2 coats of this as well, just to give it that good coverage. Ignore all the other bits of detail, they're hand painted in afterwards. And then once we're done, we end up back on the main camera, and you can see the orange has gone all over it exactly where I needed it to go, and just blocked in that piece of orange. Now you can see a little bit of bleed over onto the door, but that doesn't really matter. I'm going to paint the door black later. Now what we need to do now is give these panels some depth. So with some Nuln Oil wash, we're just going to run that into all the recesses and all around the edges of the terrain where all the orange is. So some nice defined lines here in all the little panels, and then just run the brush around all the edges as well. That really kind of makes the orange section pop and cause some nice lines of definition. Now because this is a nice fluid wash, it's easy to sort of, if you miss those lines, it's easy just to wipe it with your finger. But once we're done, I think I used, again, 2 coats for this as well, just to get that good depth, because washes are quite thin. But you can see I've just pushed that all around the edges, and then afterwards I've painted in those little detailed panels. So you can see there the Sector Mechanicus symbol, and some other bits of detail that are on there. And yeah, that's pretty much it, and you can see exactly where we're at now. The final section then is to make this a little bit more weathered. So what I've got here is a rust streaks effect from AK Interactive. Now this is an enamel colour. So if you ever painted model aeroplanes as a kid, like the old Airfix kits, you would have used those little pots of enamel. Now this is an enamel paint, exactly the same kind of stuff as that. So it's an oil-based paint rather than acrylic. Now what this means is that you can apply this sort of roughly where I'm doing it now. I mean, you can go overboard, but normally less is more. But you know, I kind of like the warm, beat up look of this, so I've applied it fairly liberally across the model. Now because it's an enamel paint and it won't dry because it's oil, you can now use either white spirit or turpentine to add to those streaks and pull that colour up and down in a vertical motion like I'm doing here, and that will grab the colour and push and pull it in a vertical direction to give that streaky effect. And you can kind of see exactly what's happening here. So you can see where it's kind of wet. That will obviously evaporate because it's like an alcohol-based thinner. And because these are enamel and they're not dry, as I said, you can start pulling that colour. And doing this, the more or less you apply will determine how deep or dark those colours can be. Now if you're not happy with, if you've washed it out a little bit too much, you can always apply a second coat of the rust effect once it's all dry, and then pull it around again with that turpentine or white spirit. So moving along a bit further then, we're going to move into some hammered copper and start applying some chipping effect. So I've taken a little bit of old sponge and a bit of tissue, and this colour is the Vallejo's hammered copper, so it's like a dark copper. It's a little bit difficult to pick up on this particular shot, but we're just going to apply some chips using the sponge in areas where you might see a little bit of excess wear. So on the edges of those panels and around some of those the final edges, the sharper edges of the kit. And then once we're happy with our hammered copper, we then just go to a brighter silver. I'm using a chainmail silver here. And exactly the same, just using the sponge and just going over exactly the same spaces where that hammered copper was applied. And then in a couple of other little bits as well, just so that it really shows that the paint has been worn off and looks a little bit more weather beaten. Now applying this silver can look a little bit stark, so once I'm happy and that's sort of been applied to the areas that I want, I'm just going to tone that down a little bit with a bit of Angrax Earthshade. This is my favourite wash. You'll notice that it appears in many of my videos. All I'm going to do is just run that over where those silver patches are. It will help blend it and help tone it down a little bit so it's not completely stark and just looks a little bit more natural. So just pushing that colour around a little bit over the silver, and that's pretty much it really. It just sort of tones down that starkness. And then make sure that you're running that up and down as well so that it adds to the weather-worn effect as well. Finally, the last little bit of technique is to use the Hat Oxide from Citadel as well, from Games Workshop. And this is sort of the verdigris kind of worn, oxidized kind of effect that you're going to see on large metallic structures that have been left out to the weather and the elements a little bit too long. So really, really good with this paint. It's very fluid. It needs a good mix because it does separate in the pot, so you do need to sort of give it a good shake. And this really is a less is more kind of effect. So I'm just trying to pick out areas on the model where it would be most suitably applied. And all we've got to do, as I said, is rinse and repeat for all 4 panels, and as you can see I've done exactly that already. That's all 4 panels, all streaked, all chipped and all oxidized, and that will complete this section of the model. So there we go then guys, that is this video wrapped up. So that large section there, taking a little bit of time and effort to do, but I think that the effect and the overall appearance of that looks pretty spot on for me. I'm really happy with that. I think that will look fabulous on the tabletop, and it is sitting there in my corner over here drying nicely, because that, as I said, that enamel paint is an oil-based paint. It won't dry anywhere near as quickly as acrylic does, so you do need to give that a good 24 hours to dry properly, even though with the turpentine or the white spirit over the top will help that drying process because you've thinned that paint really quite far down. But yeah, give it a good while before you start putting your fingers anywhere near it, because you could end up with thumbprints or anything else like that all over it, and that would really spoil the effect. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what you think of the kit and of the paint job that I've done so far in the comment section below. And until then, I shall catch you on the next video.